Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. My name is Taylor Danko, and I'm the marketing coordinator here at HR for Health. We're excited to have you join us as we explore the significance of proper documentation in the field of HR and how it can greatly impact the efficiency, compliance, and overall success of your healthcare practice. In today's fast-paced and ever-evolving business landscape, human resources plays a pivotal role in managing and supporting employees. A key aspect of this responsibility is maintaining accurate and up-to-date documentation. This not only ensures smooth operations, but also safeguards the organization from potential legal and compliance issues. And with that, let me tell you a little bit more about HR for Health. Here at HR for Health, we can help you do HR like you've never done. Of course, we specialize in HR software for non-HR people, but that doesn't mean we don't also work with seasoned HR experts to help make their processes a little easier. Our mission is to be your compliance partner and ensure a safe and positive workspace for your employees. As a result, save money, save time, improve your company culture, and avoid lawsuits, but also we're helping you not get screwed. So with that, I'm going to hand over the presentation to Lauren.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. So documentation is always a hot topic around here. So what we'll be going over today is new hire form. So what do you need to give to your new employees when you hire them? What's required from a state level, federal level, ongoing documentation, some tips there, separation documents, what you need when you either terminate an employee or they resign, and then of course issues that arise because, as you know, as practice owners and managers and practices, things never go perfectly. So we'll go through some of the common issues that might come up for you. So the first thing I want to hop into is just the federal form. So this list is a little smaller. A lot of the new hire forms that are required for employees are state specific, but from a federal perspective across all states is the W-4. You've all heard of these. That's the tax withholding form, the I-9, so confirming if they are eligible to work in the United States, equal employment opportunity policy, so just making sure that you're clearly outlining that you are an equal employment employer, an at-will relationship acknowledgement, so all states except for Montana are at-will states, meaning that the relationship can be ended by either the employer or the employee. So you just want a statement that the employee acknowledges that they recognize that it's an at-will agreement. And then the last one is the employee handbook and acknowledgement. So the handbook technically isn't a legal requirement, but it is crucial in protecting your practice because it clearly outlines all of the employees' rights, all of your policies. It just makes overall management of your employees a lot easier because you can always refer back to it on how to handle different scenarios. And then state-specific forms, not all states have this list of forms, but a lot of them do. These are just the most common ones that come up. So state withholding form, a lot of times they'll have their own version of the W-4 that the employee needs to complete as well for state taxes. Workers' compensation brochure just goes through their rights under workers' compensation if they were to be injured on the job. Disability insurance rights, so a lot of states have their own disability leave programs, and they need to know of their rights through that. The wage and employment notice goes through what their regular rate of pay is, what their overtime rate is if they're a non-exempt employee, when their pay periods are, when they're going to get paid, all of the basic payment that the employee needs to know. Pregnancy and family leave rights brochure. So again, just their rights under the state. Same with harassment and just making sure that they know that they are protected and where to go if they have any questions or concerns on any of those topics. And then the last one is the report of the new employee form. This is just letting the state know that you have an employee that you hired. A lot of times your payroll provider will do this for you. If you're a payroll client of ours, we'll handle this for you. So just make sure you're checking in with your payroll provider if you are not a current HR Health client. And I know this list might seem a little overwhelming, like where do I find all of these? Current clients, you already have all of these in your new hire checklist. Make sure that you're always accepting different updates that come up. So if you haven't looked at your new hire checklist in a while, just go make sure you don't have any of those little red triangles next to the forms. You want to make sure they're all up to date, but we automatically add all of these most recent forms for you based on your state. So if you're an HR Health client already, you're good to go here. And then a few of the recommended forms, again, they're not a legal requirement, but we recommend having them on file. So first one is emergency information for your employees. If anything were to ever happen, you want to make sure that you have someone you can contact for them. The next is a release for the use of photo and likeness. So if you're using any of your employees' information, photo for marketing purposes, so maybe on your website, on social media, you want to make sure that you have their consent in writing that they're signing off on. Again, if anything were to come up, you want to make sure that you have that on file. We provide this for you as well. So if you're wondering, where do I get this? We have it. An offer letter. So you want to make sure that that's clearly documented and they have signed off on it. Any office specific policies that you have. So maybe you have a call recording policy where all of your calls are recorded, what you need employees to say. A lot of states have rules around stating if it's a call recording, so just making sure that that's all outlined. Direct deposit form, pretty straightforward. We want to make sure that you're paying your employees correctly through direct deposit. Job description, which we'll go over a little bit later as well, but clearly outlining what's expected of them, especially at the start of employment, is crucial. And then the confidentiality agreement and non-disclosure agreement are just to protect your practice and the information that you have within it. Okay, so specific forms, the I-9 form, I'm sure you've all seen it as managers and employers, but just some things to keep in mind. It does need to be completed within 72 hours of the employee being hired. So a lot of people don't know that. You might think, oh, 2 weeks later, oh shoot, I need to complete the I-9 form. It is a legal requirement to do it within 72 hours. And you can be held liable for not having this form completed on time or correctly. There's some numbers to the right there, but even if you forget to check off a box, if you forget to enter a date, if you do anything incorrectly, it could result in $224 to $2,200 per violation. So it could get pretty pricey if you have an audit. No one wants to deal with that. So you just want to make sure you're really paying attention to the details of the I-9. There is an instruction form for employers. So I would recommend, if you haven't looked at that in a while, maybe you've been doing I-9s for years, you think you have it, but you may be doing something incorrectly. I would just recommend take a look at it, make sure that everything you're doing is correct so that if you were to be audited, you're good to go. And then you want to make sure they're also physically looking and inspecting the documents that the employee is bringing in. So this next slide actually goes through the different documents that your employees can provide. So list A is anything that just requires one document. So the most common one that you're going to see is the passport. And then list B and C, they actually have to have 2 different documents. So if they bring in their passport on their first day, then you're good to go. You can just document their passport and you're fine. If they bring in, let's say, their driver's license, then you also need one of the list C documents. So list B would be the driver's license, but then you also have to pair it with something like their social security card. So again, if they bring anything on list A, then they're good to go. That's all they need. If they bring anything on list B and C, it has to be both of those documents. So just something to keep in mind. I know it can get a little bit tricky. So again, just making sure that you're always reviewing the documentation here. The next one is the offer letter. So what should an offer letter include? So their position title, again, the at-will employment statement, except for Montana, their start date, what time that they're starting, who their supervisor is, the address of the practice, what their weekly schedule is going to be, at least initially, their rate of pay, if they're a non-exempt employee or an exempt employee, what their overtime pay is. Offer contingency is really important because if you have something like, it's contingent on passing a background check, you want to make sure that it's clearly stated in the offer letter, because if you send the offer, something comes up on their background check where you need to resend the offer because they failed the background check, you want to make sure that it clearly states that so that you can resend it. And then the last one is statement regarding proof of legal right to work in the United States. So again, those documents that we just went through, they have to provide the proof that they're eligible to work in the United States. And then another quick tip on the offer letter, you should also be providing a offer letter to temporary employees. So I know you might think, oh, they're just here in my practice for a couple hours or a couple days. I don't need to do any of this formal documentation. An offer letter is especially important for temporary employees because you want to include a start date and an end date so that it clearly states this is a temporary position. You're not offering them a full-time position with the practice, so that when the agreement ends, it's clearly stated on why the agreement ended, because it's a temporary employee, and not because you're terminating them or there was a wrongful termination claim. On average, wrongful termination settlements could be about $40,000. And to pay that just because you didn't put an end date on a temporary employment agreement would just be painful. It's painful always, but for a temporary employee, it's even more painful. So just make sure that you have that statement in there. If you're an HR for Health client, I'll show you guys later in the software how to access this temporary employee offer letter. So you already have a copy of it. You can easily download it anytime you hire a temp. If you're not an HR for Health client, just make sure you're putting that end date for any temporary employees in the offer letter. And hopefully that can save you some money if, heaven forbid, anything happens down the road. Okay, so ongoing documentation. I mentioned this a little bit, but job descriptions, why are they so important? Job descriptions are outlining their job title, their duties, responsibilities, any required qualifications, so education, experience. If it's in a role that has certifications, especially in healthcare, you want to make sure that you're clearly outlining what is required of them. But really, this is just helpful to give them the right expectations at the start of their employment. And then you can use it for things like performance reviews, anything that might come up down the road. You know that you can clearly look back at their job description and say, hey, here's where you're doing well and meeting our expectations, here's where you need to improve. So this is crucial in just making sure that you're setting the right expectations. We do provide a set list of job descriptions based on your specific industry. And then of course you can always tweak those based on your specific practice as well. But then it just saves you from having to start these from scratch, because I know it can be overwhelming. What do I put in a job description? So we do take care of that for you in our job descriptions feature, which I'll show you in the software as well. And then I mentioned this a little bit already, but our HR Resource Center has a variety of templates, different white papers, all very helpful information that might come up in the middle of employment. So maybe it's not new hire related, maybe it's not separation related. Again, maybe you need a pregnancy disability letter, or if you're in California, you want to register for an alternative work week schedule. We have all of those forms available. We also have applications. If you want sample interview questions, we have all of that available in our Resource Center as well. So again, just ongoing documentation throughout employment, you can find those in the Resource Center. Okay, the next one is leave of absence tracking. So documentation isn't just, physical forms and documents that you provide to your employees. It's also making sure that you are documenting things like sick leave, disability leave, pregnancy leave correctly. It's crucial if it came down to proving if you gave your employee the proper leave that they're entitled to. You want to make sure that you have this clearly documented so that you always have it to look back on. And then I did want to make a note, there's an upcoming deadline, June 27th. If you have 15 or more employees, the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act is going into effect on June 27th. If you're in a state that doesn't already have a pregnancy disability leave requirement, you have to provide accommodations for your pregnant employees. So whether that's, sitting for more time because they can't be on their feet for more than 4 hours at a time, time off because they have morning sickness, time off for disability leave while they're recovering from their pregnancy. So there's a variety of reasons. you want to make sure that you're checking in and have a doctor's note from them so that you know exactly how you need to accommodate them. But I just wanted to make a note of this. We are going to do a webinar in July with all the mid-year law updates where we'll go into more detail here, but because it's coming up soon, I did want to make a note. So just keep an eye on that webinar that we have coming up as well. And then this next section is separation documents. So at the time the employee leaves the practice, whether it's because they resigned, because they retired, because you terminated them, whatever the reason might be, you want to have a notice to employee as a change in relationship form on file. This just clearly states the reason for the change in relationship, comments for any additional information that you may want to provide, the effective date, and then it has a place for the employee to sign at the bottom, just acknowledging that they received this form. This just makes it easy to clearly document why the employee left, especially if they resigned. You want to make sure that you're clearly saying employer resigned on, June 1st, so the last day of June 10th. You want to make sure that you're clearly outlining that in the change in relationship form and having the employee sign off on it. And then the next one is the final paycheck acknowledgement. So this is essentially like their pay stub. It clearly outlines what their last paycheck includes. So wages, any bonuses and commissions that you may have owed them, vacation and PTO pay that you need to pay out, taxes and deductions. So it just outlines exactly what their final paycheck is including, and then they acknowledge that they received it. Keep in mind there are different requirements for different states. So some states require vacation and PTO to be paid out. Some don't. Some require it only if you don't clearly state in your policy that's not required to be paid out. So there's a lot of different things to keep in mind. Make sure that you know your state's rules. Again, if you're an HR for Health client, we have this covered for you. So I'll show you in the software, the separation document section, and there is a final pay regulations document based on your state, so you know exactly when you need to pay, what you need to pay, all of the rules for your state. So don't stress, we have you covered. Okay, so issues that can arise with documentation in general, all of the headaches that can come up. So the first one is spending valuable time on tedious manual paperwork. Obviously that's not productive. You want to make sure that you're focusing on growing your practice and making sure that your patients are taken care of. So no one wants to deal with all that manual paperwork. The next one is failure to comply with state and federal audit requirements and just general requirements. Maybe you have no idea what your state requires for new hires. It's hard to keep up with all those things, so that can obviously cause headaches there. Inadequate communication with your team regarding company policies and their rights. So this can cause misunderstandings. Employees might not know or be aware of what their rights are. You want to make sure that you're clearly communicating all of these things with them. And then the last one is misplacing physical documents may result in important paperwork being lost. I would say if you're not a current HR for Health client and you're doing physical paperwork, at least put them in the cloud somewhere so that they're secure and you can always find them. Of course, HR for Health, you can store all of your documents electronically automatically. Employees are going to automatically be sent all of these documents, so it's automatically in the software for you. But if you're not a client, then at least get them in the cloud so that they're there if you ever need to pull them. Okay, employee issues that arise, because employee issues never come up, but if they do, the first one is refusal to sign. So this is a common one that we hear about. The employee, maybe they don't want to sign the handbook, maybe they don't want to sign their final paperwork, whatever it might be. The first step is to let the employee know that their signature is just them acknowledging that they received it. Not that they necessarily agree with it, they don't have to agree with it, but they're just acknowledging that they received the physical form that you're giving to them. If they still are like, no way, I'm not signing this, the next step we recommend is to put a statement at the bottom of the form that says employee is refusing to sign this document. See if they'll at least initial it, acknowledging that they received it. So you're saying, hey, they won't sign. Hopefully they'll they will put their initials there, so they're not technically signing it, but if it ever came down to it, you can show that they at least received it. The next one is if the employee leaves without signing any form. So this would be for their final paperwork. And the same thing with remote employees. So you don't have them physically in the practice with you, but you need to give them these forms. So we recommend sending them in the mail 2 physical copies of each document, one for them to keep and one for them to sign and mail back to you. So you'll want to include a pre-stamped, pre-addressed envelope so that they can send back those signed forms to you. And then the crucial piece of this is making sure that you get a tracking number on this. You don't want to require their signature upon arrival in case they're not home or for whatever reason, but you do want to get tracking for when it arrives to them, just so that if they can never say, you know, I never received this or anything like that, you at least have that tracking. But there are some steps that you can take there. Okay, so quick demo. I'll show you all of these features in HR for Health that we've been talking about. Move over here. Okay, so the first one that I want to show you is the new hire checklist. So here's where all the new hire forms that are going to automatically send to your team members live in the software. So when you add a new hire into your HR for Health account, all of these forms are going to automatically send to your team. So this is one of our most popular features because it makes your life so much easier. So all of these are going to automatically pre-fill with the employee's information. We already have their name, any of their contact information, their email, their rate of pay, exemption. So right now, if you're physically filling out these documents for employees to sign, it's going to save you all of that time in advance because it's going to automatically pre-fill for them. And the employee can go into their HR for Health and electronically sign everything, and then you're done. So going over the new hire checklist, the first column is going to be the name of the document. If you hover over it, so especially for current clients, if you're wondering what is this form and what do I need to do with it, you can always hover over the name and we'll give you a quick breakdown of what it is. Applicable personnel is if it's for an employee or independent contractors. These will automatically send based on, so if they're an employee, they'll only get the ones that are applicable for them. If they're an independent contractor, they'll only get the ones that are applicable for them specifically as well. And then the action process explains what you need to do with it. So some of them are as simple as the employee just signs. Some the employee completes and signs, and then the authorized user completes. So for example, the W-4 you would need to provide to your payroll provider. I-9 we just went over, you need to complete your portion, acknowledge all of their documents, etc. And then the obligation is, so we have mandatory, recommended, and optional. Obviously, you don't have to keep our recommended ones or our optional ones. If you decided to just keep the mandatory, you can remove whatever you want. But we do have everything that we discussed as recommended included automatically as well. And then if you had any of your own company policies that you wanted to automatically send to your new hires, you can add your own custom documents as well. So it is customizable. And then this is all based on the state that you're located in. So it's going to automatically have all of the state required forms based on where your practice is as well. Okay, and then the next thing I want to go over that we touched on briefly is job descriptions. So here, again, we provide job descriptions, a basic list based on the industry that you're in. If we want to click on this one as a dentist, it goes over the description, any qualifications that they have to have, the job duties. Again, it's just make sure that you're setting your employees up for success right at the start, outlining what's expected of them. And then you can see which employees have confirmed it and which ones haven't. This is a test account. We have a lot of employees that have not confirmed. So if I was the manager, I would be checking in to make sure that they've seen it and they go in to acknowledge it. But you can always see the date that they confirmed it as well, which is just nice for documentation purposes in general. And then the next section is the separation documents. So this is, again, based on the state that you're in. So this account's in California. It has all the different forms here. You can also select the separation type. So a resignation is going to, by nature, have fewer documents because there's less risk associated with it. So if I I'm like, oh, okay, my employee resigned. What do I need to do? I can click resignation. And then if I just want to do, maybe I only want to do mandatory forms, I can filter that and see exactly what I need to do. So these are the two forms that we just went over, but again, it's going to provide all the documents based on the state that you're located in. So that's going to automatically have everything there. And then the informational document, again, is the final pay regulations. So this will outline when you need to pay your employees their final paycheck, what happens if you don't, do you need to pay out PTO, all of that useful information based on your specific state, just so that you're not getting yourself into any hot water there. Okay, and the next section I mentioned is our HR resources page. So this has a ton of useful information, all of our cheat sheets, checklists, guides, anything that you need there. Our templates, so we have the application, the interview questions that I mentioned, the temporary offer letter. So our offer letter templates are here. You can easily download those there. If you're a current HR Health client and haven't checked this out yet, I encourage you to check it out. We do include all of our recorded webinars here. So if you ever miss one and you want to easily just go back and watch it, you can. And then something else I wanted to mention that we just actually released this week is our little resource center here on the bottom right-hand corner. We have our law updates, feature releases, support resources, and software feedback. So our law updates goes over, again, based in your specific state, all the different changes that are happening. So here you can see the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act that I already mentioned. We're going to give you all the details that you need to know here. And then you can also learn more. So we'll click to the state's website so you can learn more about it. Of course, if you have questions, you can reach out to our team and we can help you out with that. But again, just gives you all the basic information that you need to know for your specific state. And then feature releases just goes over anything new that we've released recently so that you're educated on, what's coming up, and we want you to check out the things that are making your life easier. And then our support resources are all of our FAQs and videos. So if you have questions on adding an employee, you can go ahead and click this. Goes over all of the most common questions that we get. And then it also includes little tutorials as well. So you can always do that. And then last but not least, if you're a current HR for Health client, we love to hear your feedback. What can we improve? We want to make your lives as easy as possible. So we really appreciate when you give us feedback here. So I encourage you, go check this out, click software feedback. We want to hear from you and see how we can improve the software. Awesome. Well, that's what I wanted to show you all in the software. So with that, I will go ahead and kick it back to you, Taylor.
Hello, I'm back. And I have a couple questions for you, if you don't mind.
Awesome.
The first one is, what type of documentation should I have in place before terminating an employee?
Ooh, good question. So this would be, obviously we went over the documents that you need to provide to an employee at the time of termination, but just as crucial, maybe even more crucial, is the documentation that you have before termination. So these are things like, do you have any written violations in place for them? Do you have performance reviews clearly stating what you're expecting of them and how they're not meeting them? So you want to make sure that you have, electronic. You could do physical, but of course I'm always going to say electronic because it'll make your life so much easier. But you want to make sure that you have written documentation on what policies they violated, what they're doing incorrectly with their performance, why they have poor performance, whatever the reason for termination is. You want to make sure that you're clearly putting that into place and that the employee is receiving that documentation and acknowledging it, so that if it did come down to it, your employee can't say that they were terminated for a wrongful termination reason, or because they're pregnant or because they're disabled. It's clearly stating that it was because of their performance or a policy violation. So if you have questions on that, reach out to our team. We do have a violations feature specifically where you can easily document everything. And then we do have performance reviews. So we have pre-built templates. You can customize your own or use what we have, but it's crucial just to have all of that in writing so you have open communication with your team.
Awesome. And what happens if I don't pay my employees' final paycheck on time?
Oh, yes. So it really depends on the state. They all like to have their own rules, which makes it fun. But like I showed you guys on the separation documents page, we do have final paycheck regulations for your specific state. So it clearly outlines what the penalties are if you don't pay them on time. Some are a little bit more extreme than others. Like California always likes to be the most extreme. So I think you have to pay them a full day's wage for every day that it's late. Something, don't quote me on it, but something extreme like that. So I would just make sure that you're checking your specific state. But a lot of states really care about this because they want employees to get paid on time. So I would just recommend paying them on time to avoid paying extra fees. We don't want to pay extra fees anyway.
No, and I guess the moral of today's webinar is document everything you do, or that means it didn't happen, and
Yes.
just pay people, just pay them, because then you can't get screwed. So
Yes.
thank you, Lauren, so much for your insight and wisdom and everything
Yes.
else for today. I hope you all enjoyed this webinar. Please use our phone number, email, website, and scan this QR code if you need a fully free, federally compliant handbook. And with that, we're always available for you, and we are your partners in compliance. So thank you, everyone.